Hi folks, welcome to another one of our Before You Buy Vapor Chief videos. In this video I want to discuss increased pressure on our machines. I don't know, maybe you have noticed, maybe you haven't noticed, according to the specs, if you've been on our website previously, we've just increased the pressure by 10 psi across the board on all of our machines. Now, we're not changing the name of the machines. We're still going to call the machines by the same name, but there's going to be an increased pressure by 10 psi on all of them. So our 75 single machine will now have 85 pounds of steam pressure to start. Our refill 100 machine used to start at 100, it will now be 110, and our 125 machine will now start at 135. Now, we're not doing this just arbitrarily and turning a screw, as we know that some people out there think that you can just turn a screw and increase pressure. And if you know how to do it, sure, you can increase pressure, but what that does is the higher pressure the machine operates at, the higher temperature the machine is going to operate at. Now, you don't want a machine operating at a higher temperature and a higher pressure if the components inside can't handle it. So we're not just, again, just bumping up the pressure to say we have better specs than somebody else and try and separate us from some of the competitors. We're not doing that. We are actually putting upgraded components, which one of our competitors severely disputes. But we'll explain that in another video. We'll show you some of the components that we're using inside our machines to make sure that you can handle the pressure. Now, because we're increasing the machines 10 psi, that doesn't mean that now all of a sudden we're turning it into a pressure steamer or a pressure washer. 10 psi is going to be beneficial in some cases, but it's not going to make an astronomical difference. And people might say, well, if you went 10, why couldn't you go 15, 20, or 25? Well, again, the longer that we're leaving the heater on, and that's the key in this, is we're leaving the heater on a longer period of time, and that heats the water longer, it increases the pressure, we are creating more stress inside the machine. We're creating more heat, we're creating more pressure, and that's putting more stress on the components. So we just didn't want to do that without doing a lot of testing first, without sourcing the best components that we possibly can, and without making machines. We've actually had machines out there now for a few months that are at higher pressure. So some of the customers that have bought our machines in the last few months, you may have noticed on your pressure gauge that these machines are at higher pressure. So we've actually started producing the machines at a higher pressure and trying to make sure that they hold up out there, which we really know they would, and we're not having any problems, before we started to actually advertise the higher pressure. Now, in some cases, a couple of our models aren't the highest pressure out there. And you might know by doing your research in a certain category that we're still not the highest pressure out there. And I feel that we don't need to be. It's not a race to see who can produce the machine at the highest pressure. It's about getting good pressure and making sure the machine can handle it and still having a very good, reliable commercial machine. So we decided that an extra 10 psi was a good pressure increase across the board without going too crazy and without putting too much stress on the machine. So in our second video, there might be a couple more videos regarding the pressure increase. We're going to talk about the components that we use inside the machines that are a little bit different than the competitors, even though they might look the same, and one of our competitors disputes that we are truly using upgraded components. And we'll explain that in another video. But look for our machines to have an increased pressure. Now that you're seeing this video, you'll also be seeing the higher pressure on our machines, and it doesn't necessarily mean an increase of price. The only reason that there might be a slight increase in price is because the dollar is a little bit weaker against the euro, and that's the reason why we're paying a little bit more money for our machines. So if there is a slight price increase, it's not just because we just jumped the pressure, but we are spending a little bit more money on the components to make sure the machines can handle it. So look for part 2 of the video, and we'll explain the components that go into the machines to make sure that they can handle the higher pressure and higher temperature.